Okay, great. So let me just quickly check. So I think we're recording. Okay, so good. So everyone, it's week 6. Okay, so a couple more weeks before the next deadline is due. But with regards to the next deadline, though, it's relatively straightforward again, right? What you're doing is you're using your look development skills, but this time in a more stylized environment or stylized look. So that means we might need to cover, there's going to be significant exploration, right? So yes, you're doing texturing and you're doing lighting, but you're also trying to enhance your texturing, lighting, and also shading to come up with something a bit more stylized. So that's the idea behind this one. And I already gave you guys the scope sheet for that. So we're going to create a 10-second sequence again. Hopefully, we start with a close-up. Again, we have a subject, right? We actually have a subject. So the subject is going to be the lady there sitting, and then we're going to do a either dolly in or a dolly out. Okay, so around 10 seconds of that. Again, we're doing a stylized look. So again, similar to this one, it's not photoreal, it's highly stylized. And the idea behind that is we just want that appealing, consistent backlighting effect that you normally see with stylized looks. Especially, we're not going to the 2D shaders, right? We're just going with still 3D, but it does have that stylized backlighting. We want that soft gradient look in the shading. And then we also want uneven or contour lines. And lastly, we want that painterly look. So it's a stylized texturing, meaning uh, we want to look at ways to perhaps create that painterly look. When I say painterly, I leave it up to you with regards to how you interpret that. Painterly might mean oil painting or it might be something else. But the idea is it's not, it's not photoreal, right? So it has to be a bit more stylized. So hopefully that's clear. As I mentioned, we're just rendering, or sorry, we're just shading and texturing this immediate area. And for everything else, I want you to have that as, a gray wireframe material. It's still affected by lights. It's not flat. It's wireframe gray, but we'll talk about that perhaps later on. Okay, or maybe in the next class. So hopefully it's clear in terms of what you guys are actually doing. Now, just to see, because at this stage, right, with regards to our process, if you remember our process, and I don't think I have it here. Okay, so with regards to our process, remember we start off with the Bible, the look planning, basically the planning for a look dev that includes the lighting. So this is where you guys again, we're not doing it, we're not creating a light plan, but this is where you actually need to do it on your own. And then we want to create some sort of shading plan as well. So that includes a call out sheet, right? But again, I'm going to leave it up to you to do it yourself because I won't ask you to show it in the challenges. So this is under the assumption that you guys already did some pre-planning already or planning for your lighting and for your materials, right? But again, after that we go to lighting, and then after lighting we go to shading, and then we'll go to experimentation afterwards, right? So let's see what you have with regards to your lighting. I think I saw some of it already, and it's looking pretty good. So for example, this one, so see, so we have Adam, again, we're looking for that um, Rembrandt lighting, right? Meaning we have a specific key light and we do have that Rembrandt lighting on the other side. So there's going to be a fill and I can see it from here, right? So that's good. Okay, now remember, we're going with that particular look. So that's good from Adam. Let's have a look at Ida's one. So again, stylized one here. I think okay. You tried using subsurface scattering and you're still experimenting. So we'll have a look at that later. But again, just take note. The problem with subsurface scattering, if it's not correct, you won't actually get to see the shadows because with subsurface scattering, it actually absorbs the light and gets rid of the shadows. So it's hard to see if you're using Rembrandt lighting here, if your subsurface scattering is a bit too much. Okay, so but that's a good start as well with regards to the lighting. Let's have a look at others. Nothing really concerning at this stage. So it looks like everyone did a pretty good job with regards to that. So see, similar stuff. So I can see that Rembrandt lighting on the other side. So that's good. So that's fill. And then a key and a fill light, so it's clear. So Danny as well. So see, I like that. Um, but you might need to add a few more lights. So see, so maybe a few more lights because it looks like this is really indoors. So you might want to add another light here just to illuminate that area. But I do like what you have there. Okay, so Jungyan as well. So see, might need to have your light a bit more intense on the key side so that it's going to be obvious with regards to your Rembrandt lighting, right? So good start there as well. Okay, so I think everyone did a good job. Again, for some of you who haven't, always a good idea to share because it does, again, contribute to your marks. And when I say contribute, if you end up doing it in the end, then there's really no way for me to see it. And again, if you wait for the end to do all of that, it's actually a bit more challenging from your end as well. So, for example, for the students who've done it already, that means you're done with the lighting. That means you're like 30% along the way, right? So, you don't even have to worry about the lights at this stage. You can now start working about texturing and shading, right? And then rendering. Okay. So, for today, I just want to focus on one thing, okay? And that's texturing, okay? So remember in the first assessment, we dealt with procedural texturing. And when I say procedural, meaning we grabbed materials or we created quote unquote materials, although a lot of us just ended up downloading stuff, which is fine. There are ways to actually generate our own materials. But anyway, we have materials and our procedural method is we modify the UVs or we change the UVs to match the material and change the orientation of textures and stuff like that, which is a good method for environments. And we do that quite a lot in games where we have to use styling. And because in games, you're really limited to the amount of materials you're supposed to use. So if you're, let's say, shading an environment, you're using like 4 or 5 materials the most. You can't have one material every single object because every material is a significant uh, hold on your resources, right? So even in films, we don't want to use too many materials. Okay, so for this one, instead of using procedural methods for texturing and shading, we're going to be using texture painting. And well, a combination of procedural and texture painting. And for that, we're going to be using Substance Painter. And I understand that all of you probably worked with Substance Painter before. I guess a quick check here, who hasn't worked with Substance Painter? So anyone here who hasn't worked with Substance Painter at all. So in theory, right, Substance Painter will be in your ACR um, and your AAC subjects, meaning your basic asset creation and advanced asset creation, right? So I'm assuming that everyone used Substance already, so that's good. Okay, so it's nothing really special, right? We're not. I'm not going to cover the basics of Substance Painter. I'll just cover some techniques that will help you, I guess, use it in a more procedural manner. Okay, so let's have a look at some texturing rules. Okay, so for textures, right, I have mentioned if you have a look at the object itself, you have a lot of objects there. So what I want you to do is limit yourself to maybe 3 or 4 materials. I say 6 materials here, but try limiting yourself to around 4 to 6, meaning you can't have one material for the hair, another material for the hat, another material for the jacket, another material for the body and the boots, and then another material for every single small object there. They'll Again, that's inefficient. Okay, we just want around 4 to 6 materials, right? And I'll explain what you need to do later on. Again, using just 4 materials is highly efficient, and if you're doing this in games, we're probably limited to just a few, really. In fact, it's not even uncommon to have one entire environment just using one material, and then you just use other techniques like texture atlases, and also trim sheets to be able to change the textures for different objects, right? But we'll deal with that later on. But anyway, this is going to be our texturing workflow, right? Number one, we have to organize objects first. Okay, so we organize objects so we know what materials to assign specific objects, and then we're going to be either creating UVs or we're going to be editing the UVs So we're going to be using a technique called UDIMS, right? So UDIMS is basically a standard when you're doing stuff in film. In games, it's slightly different. Normally, you have something like texture sets, but for this one, we're using UDIMS, and I'll explain what you need to do later on. And then we can start shading. Okay, so if you have four materials, maybe you have one material for the body, another material for the clothing, another one for the props, and another one for the other props. So maybe four materials. Okay. So let's go with that process. Okay, so what I'll do is I'm going to open my scene and then I'm going to set my project, right? And then I'm going to open that scene. I have lighting there. Okay. And again, I think I modified it a little bit, but nothing really different from what I did last week. So if you just have a look, I guess, and let me just move this one to the side. If you just have a look at what I have, see, it's just, I just added a a volumetric light. So see, and I probably need to adjust that. But let's say I'm happy with that. I can definitely still adjust it. I want the light really flooding in from the window. And we'll talk about how to actually replace that with an actual background. But anyway, this is my starting lighting so far. Okay. So as I mentioned, we're doing texturing first and a little bit of shading, and then we're going to next week start playing around with shaders to come up with different looks. Okay. So our process, as I mentioned, number one, let's organize our objects first. Okay? So, as I mentioned, we want a situation where we have maybe 4 to 6 materials, right? So, what I'll do is I'll start organizing things. Okay? So, maybe here. Okay? I'll start with, let's say I'm thinking about it, maybe for the character, maybe I'll have one material for the clothes, another material for the body. And how do you normally, how do you normally evaluate how many materials you need? It's usually shader dependent. So just an example, right? I know that I need subsurface scattering. So how light affects skin is different from how it affects regular objects because skin is highly translucent. Well, not highly, but it's translucent, meaning it actually absorbs light and then light bounces off the skin. So you normally prefer having some sort of skin shader for that, right? So I know that I need a special shader for this. So I know that I want one shader here, and maybe, you know what? Maybe the eyes as well. I might just include that as it might be subsurface as well. So maybe I'll just include the eyes and I'll also maybe include the hair. So basically what I'm doing, right, is I'm going to create my materials first under Hypershade. And let me just optimize scene so we don't have to deal with materials that we don't really need. So there you go. Okay. So what I'm saying, everyone, is I'm going to go to my Hypershade. I think we covered Hypershade already last assessment. So I'm going to create the materials that I want or I need. Okay. Number one, I'll go to Arnold under Shader. I'm going to create my AI standard surface. And then I'm going to just rename this. That's going to be my matte body, for example. Okay, so that's my material for my body. Okay, graph and a clear graph. I'll create another material. And again, I'll go under shader and then standard surface. And then maybe this one, matte clothing. Okay, so that's two materials. I'll look for a third material. I probably want one material for, you know what, for all of the props. Maybe I'll just have one material for all of the props. So what I'll do is I'll just have one material shader, another standard surface, and I'll call that matte props. And when I say props, it's basically the stuff around the lady, right? So I already have the clothing. I have the the body, and then I have the prop. See, so I am even thinking just three materials are fine for this. Okay, so I only have three materials, right? So what I'm thinking is now I can start perhaps organizing things. Okay, so what do I want? So I'm thinking about the body first. Okay. So for the body, as I mentioned, right, I want to assign, and maybe for temporarily, this matte material or some matte for the body, I'll just temporarily assign it a color so I can have some visual distinction between the different materials. So I want this material, right, to be assigned to the, I'm thinking it's going to be assigned to the body, which is that one. and maybe assign to the hair. So I understand that it's not technically subsurface, but I'm going to assign that to the hair. And I'm also going to assign that to the eyes. So basically the eyes, the body, and the hair. So see, notice that there's actually groups there. Okay, so I'm going to assign that to the eyes, the body, and the hair. And what I'll do is I'm going to select those in my outliner, and I'm going to assign that to the body, right? So matte body. There you go. So now everything is green. So again, it's you're not actually turning it into green, right? It's we're just putting a visual distinction between objects assigned to that particular material. Okay, so now I have something like that. Okay, next one. Um, for the clothing, I'll just give it maybe a yellow one. Okay, and again, for the clothing, it's going to be this pendant, this shirt, the shoes, the jacket, the pants, and I think that's it. You know what? This one actually makes sense. So let me just see where it is. So the hat. So maybe the hat. What else? Let me just check, guys. Okay. So the hat, I'll just center pivot that so I can actually move it. So I think the hat is good. The pendant, I think maybe this one as well. So the wand and the hat. Okay. You know what? I'll actually move the wand and the hat back to the lady character. So I'm thinking the hat. So it's easier. You don't have to, but I'm just see, I just want that as part of the clothing. So it's going to be this one and this one. Okay. And I think that's it. Okay. So what I'll do is I'm going to assign it my matte clothing. Sorry. And also the actual clothing, right? So pendant, shoes, pants, and I think that's it. And then assign it the material. This one. Jeez. This one too. So that's that. I'll plug it in there and assign that the material as well. There you go, guys. Okay, so notice now that I assigned the material. And again, for everything else, for the props here, I'm going to assign it. So basically the props, right? Um, I'll just hide the lady character. So because I really just want all of these, so not including the, maybe not that, just the immediate props, right? So I'm thinking it's going to be the skull. So let's see. A bit tricky, but it's going to be this record player. And what I'll do, right, is I'll just unparent that, start unparenting that. So it's this, the camera. It's this one, which is the hat. And then I think this one as well. So this one and this one. I'm unparenting it by going to edit unparent so that I can just group them later on together. And I think it's going to be this one. So whatever that is our record player. So it's this one's, right? The record player. And I think modify center pivot. And I think this one as well, the lamp. So it's the lamp. Oops. So it's the lamp, and I'll just plug that here. I'm looking for the lamp. That's weird. Okay, got it. Sorry, guys. Let me just look for that. I'm just looking for it because that's a lamp group. There you go. So I'll just select the lamp group, plug it in there. Okay, jeez, it's weird. Okay, I think because it's doing it alphabetically, so it's okay. It doesn't matter. Anyway, so it's going to be these that are part of my props. I think, let me just temporarily move it, and also this comb here. Okay, so I'll just look for that comb. So that's probably the trickiest bit. I'll unparent that. So remember, it's going to be this, and this, and including the lamp as well. Okay, so I'm going to just group them together. And this is going to be my props, right? So as I mentioned, it's this stuff here, right? So I'll just center pivot that. So it's this stuff here. Okay, so see, again, everything else I'm going to assign a wireframe mat, not a mat, but a wireframe gray material to it. So what I'll do is I'll just have the props now, just to prove my point. So I have my props. I have that. Okay, so I have the props. Then I have the character, and I have the character's clothes. And lastly, for the props, I'll just assign the matte props all. I'll give it a color. Okay, maybe blue. And then I'll just assign that one. Okay, so the idea behind this is, let me just do that one more time. There you go. Jeez, okay, so there you go, guys. Okay, so what's happening, right? Is I just used three materials. Okay, I haven't really included everything else, but three materials is fine. Um, oh, I forgot the socks. So maybe I'll just include the socks here. And maybe I'll just include, you know what? I'll just delete the socks. I won't have to assign anything there. But anyway, so what I was able to do, right? I created my materials. As I mentioned, I want you to limit your materials. So let's say 4 or 6. I even just have 3. Okay, so 3 materials. Okay, and then I organize the objects and assign the specific materials to those specific objects. Particularly, right? How I created it is um, I assigned one material for all of the immediate props I want to texture. Again, you're not texturing everything, just the immediate props. And then I assign a different material for the clothing, and then different material that's related to the body of the character that includes the hair, the brows, and the actual skin. Okay, so is that step clear for everyone? Okay, I'm not saying you do it exactly the same as how I did it. If you, for example, use 4 materials, that's fine. But I'm just showing you that, see, with 3 materials, I just need to create my materials first, then organize my objects, and then assign my materials to the proper objects. Okay, so just checking if that's relatively clear for everyone. So Ida, Danny, Jared, Riley, Samuel, and Shihao, relatively straightforward. No questions there. Okay, so uh, what's the issue? The issue is if you don't know UDIMs or you don't know texture sets, what will happen is your material, right, will only be limited to that 0, 1 texture space. So if I go to my UV editor, if you don't know UDIMs, the idea behind this is if you have a material, right, and you're using a texture, the texture is basically just using that 0, 1 texture space. And let me just see if I can, there you go. Okay, if I just go, let me just see if I can, if I remember how to turn. I just want to let you guys see that 0, 1 texture space. Let me just see if I can just do it here. Under view. Now looks like I might have forgotten how to do it. But anyway, the idea is you see that 0, 1 texture space, guys. So that's 0 and then to 1 and then 0 to 1. So if you assign a material, you're limited to that 0, 1 texture space. That's an issue, right? It's an issue because what that means is all of my objects, let's say the props, all of the props will share that same UV space. Okay. So the issue with that is if it's only sharing the same UV space, even if your UVs, right? So see, even if your UVs, so there you go. Okay, so even if your UVs are, or even if your texture is like 2K, let's say your texture is huge, okay? It's like 8K or maybe even 16K. It still won't be enough to have enough detail on your object. So what do I mean by that, guys? So what I mean by that is this one, okay? So let me just show you what I mean, okay? So if everything is sharing, right, the same UV space, this is the UVs for the hat. What happens is, guys, see, so they won't intersect, or they won't, they'll have their unique UV space. What will happen is you'll have to end up really making that extremely small, okay, like that. And the reason why you need to make that extremely small is so the rest can have their own UV space. The problem if it's extremely small, guys, is notice that that probably only has like 20 pixels. Okay, so what does it mean? That means you only have 20 pixels to have a texture, or basically have 20 pixels to create a texture for this relatively big object. Okay, so again, if you're only limited to that 0, 1 texture space, right? Every single one of your objects have to have unique UV spaces. Otherwise, they end up overlapping each other with regards to the texture. And if they do have unique UV spaces, right, what happens is they'll end up with having a very small UV space, maybe just a few pixels to define the texture for that object. Okay, so what we normally do is we use a process called UDIMs. Okay, so UDIMs allow you, again, it's really standard for any so let me just show you what it looks like. Okay, so the thing is, you're not really limited to that 0, 1 texture space, right? So see, notice that you can actually use multiple UV or, well, UV spaces, right? So see, for example, this one. See, notice that that one character actually used like 9 tiles. Okay, so what this means is if you actually have a look at your UV editor, okay, you're not really just limited to that 0, 1 texture space. You can actually use this one beside it, this one beside it, this one beside it. Okay? In fact, you can even use it in the negative and the positive, but for us, we're just concentrating on the positive. Don't use the negative area, meaning don't go left, don't go down. Just go positive, positive going up, and positive going right. Okay? That's the only thing because we're using UDIMs. If we're using other methods, then you can go left and right or left and bottom. But for us, we're using specifically UDIMs because that's how Substance Painter prefers it. So we just need to use the positive direction. Okay, so how does this work now? Okay, let's have a look at maybe the character. Okay, so for the character, guys, remember, right? For our character, and let me just open that. You know what? Let me just change this to UV editing so you can see it. Okay. And then I'll turn on that one. Okay. So for the character, guys, okay, as I mentioned, right? For the character, they all share UVs. So see, notice what happens, right? These are the UVs, and I already gave you so you already have UVs on your object. You don't even have to move it or recreate that. You can recreate it if you want. But for example, this one, guys, see, these are the UVs for the body, I think. Okay, so see, this is the UVs for the body and the legs. So notice that they occupy that 0, 1 texture space. So that's good. Okay, notice that for the head, I can actually assign its own UV space by just selecting the shells. I'm selecting all of it. So that's the head and I'm not sure. That's probably the head and the tongue and maybe the ears. But see, I'll just move it to the right-hand side. So again, don't use the negative bits. So don't go left and don't go bottom, okay? Or don't go down. Just go right and going up. So this is my UV space for the face. So see, it's basically a UV tile or a UDIM tile for the face. So these are my UDIM tiles for the body, UDIM tiles for the face, okay? Now, we're not talking about things like textile density for now because it's okay. We're not too focused with the textile density because again, we're using UDIMs and it's just we'll just do it in a relatively straightforward manner first. Okay, so it won't be that big a deal for what we're trying to do. So again, notice now that I have in here, right, the body. I have here the face, and I also want to include, I think, there you go. So I also want to include the eyes and the hair. So these are for the hair, guys. Okay. So for the hair, we do have an issue. Okay. It's not really a big an issue, but basically, right? Notice that every single strand of hair there, or a clump of hair, they actually share the same UV space. Okay. So if you want, right? If you want, so what does it mean? If they're all sharing the same UV space, what that means is whatever texture you assign to this object, so this one, whatever texture you assign to that one object, I'm having a hard time selecting stuff. There you go. Okay, so basically, whatever texture you assign this one object here, you're actually assigning it also to the other objects. Okay, so that's the idea behind if it's overlapping, whatever texture you assign here is also going to be the same texture you assign here. So that's an issue, right? If you want a unique texture here, then we have to make sure that it also has its unique UV space. Anyway, if you're happy with this, that's fine, but I'm not. I prefer having different unique UV spaces for each strand of my hair. So what I'll do, guys, is maybe I'll save it just in case it crashes. I'll just go there and call this O2 texturing. Okay. And what I'll do is I'm going to go to UVs and I'm going to go automatic. Okay. So automatic just creates automatic UVs for me. I'll just select that object again. It's the hair, and then go again UVs and then automatic. Okay. Now, notice now it didn't work. And the reason for that is, okay, so the reason for that is for this to work, I actually need to select the objects manually, meaning I might need to go here in the hair group, view selected, and then actually have to drag and select that. And then I go to UVs and then automatic. Okay, nope. So do that one more time, select that. I'll make sure to select the objects themselves. These ones, and then UVs, and then automatic. Okay, there you go. So see, notice now that they have their own UV space for every single clump of hair there. Okay, so I'll just delete all history. And then what I'll do, guys, is we're not done. Okay, I'm going to move. Remember, I can't have these UVs in the same area as my body because I know that it's part of my body, right? If you don't believe me, select the body. See, the body is here, the face is here. So for the hair, since they're sharing the same material, what I need to do is I need to move the hair to the maybe third tile, so which is somewhere here. So see, maybe I'll make it smaller as well. Okay. So if you have a look at my objects now, right? So that's the hair, that's the body, and that's the face. Okay. So now I have that. Not done because I also need to do it for the eyes. So what I'll do is I'll select the eyes. So this one, guys, that's the eyes. Let me just see if that actually looks good. I don't think the UVs are correct for that, but anyway, it's fine. Maybe for the eyeballs and the iris. So see, for example, the eyeballs, I have two eyeballs there. They're overlapping UVs. So what I'll do is maybe I'll just select all of them. Maybe select all of them here. So see, the lashes, including the eyeballs. And then I'll just go under modify. I'll just save this just in case it crashes. So I'll just go modify and then I'll just lay it out. Layout means you're just letting Maya organize all the UVs properly so they don't overlap. So layout, and then there you go. So see, notice now that it's laying it out. Let's just select the UV shells here. And maybe I can make that slightly bigger. I'll reposition that. And these ones are the lashes really. So I can make that bigger. Okay. So maybe bigger. And then maybe I'll select. There you go. Okay. So again, the idea is these are the UVs for the eyes. Okay. And I think I actually have a few there. Okay. So what I'll do, everyone, is the UVs for the eyes and the lashes. Okay. I'll make that smaller. And again, I can't have it there. Hopefully you understand why I can't have it there, right? I can't have it there because I know that the body is already there. Again, if it's there, if they're overlapping, what happens is whatever texture you assign to the body will also get assigned to the eyes. And you don't want that. Again, they have to have their own unique UV space. Okay, that's why I'm repositioning this all the way to the right. Okay, so maybe here. Uh, I think the fourth is fine, I think. So not quite sure. Fourth is fine, but let's see. Okay, so these are the eyes. This is the body. That's the hair. Okay, so that actually looks correct. Okay, so again, I assigned one material to all of them, right? But this means that either sharing one material, but they actually have four unique UDIM tiles. So one here, one here, one here, and one here. Okay? When you're done, just delete the history. Okay, so there you go. Okay. So question. So we will paint then the textures. That's right. So you'll paint the textures inside Substance Painter, but you have to organize the materials first. Otherwise, texturing in Substance Painter will be very problematic if you don't organize your materials properly. If you don't believe me as well, you can try it without organizing your materials and your UVs, and then once you export your stuff and once you start painting, you'll actually discover that whatever you start painting or start, you start painting your body, and then after you painted your body, your face also changes because they're actually sharing the same UV space. So that's again, you'll definitely encounter that issue if you don't organize your materials and tiles properly. But this one, right? It looks like I'm happy with that. Okay, I'll delete all history. And I'll do everything faster, guys. Okay? So remember, for the clothes, they're sharing, sorry, for the clothes, I assigned a material for the clothes. So what I'll do is I'll temporarily hide this and maybe hide this so you can really see what I mean. Okay? So these are the clothes, guys. Okay? And maybe these are the props. Props. Geez, is that the props? There you go. I have the props. Okay, so these are the clothes, right? So let me just turn off so you won't get confused with the lighting as well. Just turn it off. Okay, there you go. So remember, right, for the clothes, I assigned the same material to it. But this is an issue. Okay, this is an issue right now because if you have a look, notice that they're all sharing the same UV space. So again, they're sharing the same material, but they're also sharing the same UV space. This is problematic, right? Because if they share the same UV space, whatever material or texture you add to, let's say, one side of it or one part of it, it will automatically get assigned or painted on another object. Okay, they have to have their unique UV space. Now, the reason why we're using UV tiles or UDIM tiles is because if we don't use UDIM tiles, they will all share that 0, 1 texture space. And if you don't, let me just show you what I mean. So if you don't do that, um, let me just see if I can just do it here. Um, so if you don't do it that way, guys, let me just show you. You'll end up with something like this. See, that's it. That's even problematic. See, so what happens is you're going to be cramming everything in that 0, 1 texture space, and that's going to be extremely problematic. Okay, so what I'll do though, okay, I'm going to perhaps do it one object at a time. Let's start with the pants. Okay, so see, with the pants, notice that, um, let's see, I'll just go UV shell. So for the pants, guys, I'll select the pants here, and I think I can just select the UV shells, and maybe I'll just go modify and then lay it out. Okay, there you go. So see, I just laid out the UVs, so it just auto organizes it. So now it's in that 0, 1 texture space, so that's good. So pants are good. Okay, let's have a look at the vest or the shirt. So maybe shirt. So see, guys, notice that it has proper UVs. That's okay. The problem is it cannot be in that same location. So I have to move it to the right. Okay, so there you go. So now it's in the right. Okay, so just to show you, that's my shirt and that's my pants. Okay, there you go. Next one. Let's have a look at the shoes. Shoes are here, but notice that it's highly disorganized. So what I'll do is, again, I'll just go under modify and then lay out everything. Okay, if it doesn't work, just do it manually, meaning select that, or meaning select these shoes, select the UV shells here, and then go modify and then layout. Okay, so notice what happens. Everything is now laid out properly. I'll make that smaller. But again, it can't be in that 0, 1 texture space. I have to move that to the right. Okay, so maybe here. Okay, so let's have a look. That's my shirt and then my pants. Okay, so there you go. Jacket, I'll select that. Similar stuff. I'm going to select all UV shells, go to modify, and then layout again. Okay, make that smaller, and then I'll move that to this other side. Fourth. So that looks okay. And then lastly, so let's see. So we have, let me just check. We have the shirt, the shoes, the jacket, and the pants. And then the pendant. Okay, so for the pendant, similar stuff, UV shell, modify, layout, and then I'll make that smaller. You don't really need the pendant to have its own UV space because it's extremely small. But I do have the hat there. See? So I do have the hat. So what I'll do is I'll just select the UVs for the hat. I think it's in the fifth one. I'll just reposition it here. So, and then I'll also have this bits. So this bits. And again, I'll select the UVs, modify, layout, make that smaller. So what I'm saying, guys, is see, these are relatively small parts of the character. So I want to put it all in the same UDIM tile. So basically that, and I think the pendant, right? Sorry, the pendant. So basically the pendant, the hat, and that one. Okay. So what I'll do is I'll just modify that. Yikes. Is it this one? UVs, make that small. Okay, reposition that there. Okay, just checking if I did everything correctly. So that's okay. Shirt, pendant, hat, um, this one, and the wand. I'll just include the wand. Select the UVs again, and then modify, and then layout. Okay, and then scale that down, and then reposition that maybe somewhere here. So let's see, guys. Okay, so I have again, I have the shoes, own UV, own UDIM tile. I have the jacket, own UV tile. Pants, its own UV tile. Shirt, its own UV tile. And lastly, the pendant, the wand, the hat, and the those extra bits. I have an issue with the pendant. So the hat is okay. It's the pendant, not that pendant, sorry, the wand. Okay. So UV shell, reposition that there, reposition that there, make those smaller. Okay, so let's do it one more time. So see, let's check if everything looks good. So that looks okay. Nothing is overlapping, hopefully. So that's good. That's good. That's good. See, guys. So I have 5 Udin tiles for the clothing. Okay. So just to show you. Okay. Now some of you will be asking. We have the character. Okay. So remember, we have the character here. So let me just show that. So some of you are asking, perhaps, what about the character? The character is sharing the same UDIM tiles as the clothing. So see, so this is the clothing, remember? And this is the character. Okay? It doesn't matter, guys, because we're assigning 2 different materials to them. Okay? So again, it doesn't matter because we're assigning 2 different materials to them. They can overlap if they have different materials. The only issue is if they're using the same materials and they overlap, that's the issue. Okay? But if they're different materials, then and they overlap, that's fine. Now your question might be if I just need different materials, can I just assign different materials to everything? Yes, you can. But again, we go back to the problem, right? The problem is if you assign too many materials, if you have like 100 materials, that's highly inefficient. Okay, that will actually get you fired easily in a game. So in a game, as I mentioned, the more materials you add, the more resources it will eat. And then you might say that you just need a faster graphics card. What if your game is mobile based? Then you might say you just get a really fast mobile device. Again, maybe in the future, like 10 years, everything is extremely fast and you don't really have to think about resources or poly count. Maybe that's a future that, where you don't think about anything other than just making it look good. But we're not in that position yet. So if you're working in a studio, you're always going to find ways to optimize your stuff. Okay, so another question. So if you want, yes, that's right. So if you want one material, you need to organize UVs. If you have different materials for different objects, then it won't be an issue. But as I mentioned, right, if you're suggesting to assign a different material to every single object here, let's say the eyes, the hair, the body, etc., you'll easily arrive at a situation where you have 25 to 30 materials, and in a game that's highly inefficient. Okay, so we're trying to put everything in. Again, basically what happens is if you're in a game or even when you're rendering, right? Every single material there needs to be processed, and processing materials actually take a much more longer than processing geometry. Uh, s- so most of the time anyway. So what we're saying is we're trying to just optimize stuff, okay, for your future, okay, for future projects, okay. Okay, so that's correct. So like I mentioned earlier, different materials you can start from. So if you have a different material, then you can start again, meaning you can now start using that 0 on texture space, and then you can use the other tiles as well. Okay, so but if you're using one material and then there's a lot of objects, each of those objects have to have their own UV space. That means you have to organize the tiles properly. Okay, so almost done, guys. Don't really have. I want to do it for the objects. You know what? Let's just do it really fast for the props. So what I'll do is I'll just hide this. And for the props, guys, let me just turn it on. And then let's just turn on the props because I don't want a situation where in the props might be a problem. So let's have a look. For the props, uh, again, we just do it one object at a time. So I'm thinking I can deal with the skull, the hat, and the other hat. So see, I'll just select all of them, then select the UV shells, and then go to modify and then layout. Okay, and then if you have this where you need to fix manifold geometry, close it first. Make sure to save your scene because if it needs to fix it, there might be a chance that it uh, stops or hangs. So just go again. So again, the idea is I'm selecting the objects, right? See manually. So again, I want the same tile for this, for the hat, and for the comb because they're relatively small. Okay. So what I'll do is I select the groups and then I go select in my UV editor. I'll go UV shells and select the UVs shells. I mean, and then go modify and then go layout. But again, it asks me to clean up the geometry, so I'll just fix non-manifold geometry. And there you go. Okay. So that looks okay. The problem is I'm not a fan of how it's arranging those UVs. So maybe again, I'll just go in, um, do that again, and then select the UVs, modify, layout. So if this still doesn't let you do it properly, maybe just do it manually yourself, or maybe do it one at a time. Modify, so the hat first, modify layout. Okay. There's just a really big strip there, which is annoying. Let's see. What I'm thinking, guys, is I think I can just go in and just do. my UVs again. Let's see if I can just do that. So hat, that one, and then that one. Okay. And then I'll just go automatic. I'll just view selected, and I'll just select all of it. And I'll just go UVs automatic. There you go. Okay. And then once I'm done, I'll just go and select the UVs again and then layout. There you go. So that's better, I think. So let's see. So that's the UVs for one hat, the UVs for another hat, and the comb UVs. That actually works well. Okay, so again, I just used automatic. It's nothing special, not ideal if you're doing it in the games. Well, if you're doing it in games, automatic is fine for small props. But if you have hero props and hero characters, they always want to have you UV it properly. But most of the time, if it's a small prop, automatic UVs are fine. If you end up doing proper UVs for every single prop in a game, they'll probably take you forever to do. So it's normal if it's a non-important prop in games or films, automatic UVs are fine. Okay. So what I'll do is I'll just go UVs and I'll just scale that down. Okay. So I'll put this in one side. So those are the smaller props. Then I have the bigger ones, which is this object here. I'm pretty sure that's not good UVs, guys. So what I'll do is I'll just create new UVs for that. So what I'll do is I'll just select UVs. Oops. So select all of them. So I'll just select the objects by going object mode and just select that. And then just go modify and then just go automatic. Sorry, UVs and then just go automatic. So there you go. So that's the UVs for, and then afterwards I'll just go uh, select the UV shells and then go modify and then just go layout. Okay, so there you go. So now I laid out the UVs for that bit. Scale this down. Okay, so that's fine. The reason why I'm scaling it down is one other thing you don't want is you see, you don't want points just immediately in the border. See, that's an issue. Sometimes you get away with it. Sometimes Substance Painter doesn't like it at all. So I just scale it down just a tiny bit so I won't have points on the borders. Because as I mentioned, right, sometimes Substance Painter doesn't like it at all. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll just make that smaller. And then let's have a look at everything else. So I'll have a look at this one. That's good. Comb is good. Record player. Record player, pretty sure I need to create proper UVs for that. So go object mode, select all the objects there, go UVs, go automatic. Okay. And yikes, I should have saved. Yeah, okay, geez. So again, guys, just remember to save. That's good. Jeez. Okay, I'll just delete all history. Okay, going back, I'll just go UV shells, select all the UVs, modify, and then layout. Okay, there you go. Okay, so that's fine. And then I'll just select all the UVs again, make that smaller. And remember, I can't use this bit. I'm already using it. I think I can't use that other bit as well. So I'll just put it on the third one and then just delete the history. And I'm almost done. Okay, so this is the UVs or this is my object, the lamp. Similar stuff. I'll select all the objects. I say objects, right? Don't select the components, just select the objects. Just go UVs and then just go automatic. Okay, so then afterwards, select the UV shells or the UVs and then go modify and then layout. Okay, and then once you're done, select the UVs again. Remember, I need to place that in the fourth one. Make that smaller. And I think that's it. Okay, let's see if I've done everything. So that's the lamp, that's the record player, that's the camera. Okay, so that's the camera. That's the hat. Yikes. So this one's okay. I need to reposition those towards the second one. Okay, so there you go. Okay, see guys, so that's the lamp, that's the record player, that's the camera, and those are the other three objects. Okay, so I essentially was able to create UVs for all of my props, right? And again, at that stage, right, I'm almost, I'm practically done. Okay, I'm done organizing my scene. So this is will probably take you some time to do, everyone. So organizing your objects and materials. Okay, so, but once you've done that, it makes everything easy inside Substance Painter. Okay, so is this clear for everyone? Just checking. Organizing materials and objects and materials. So basically, create your materials, assign to the objects that you want that material to be part of, and then start modifying your UVs so that you have different UDIM tiles. Okay, so clear with regards to what you need to do. Okay. Um, okay, so let's have a look at exporting it now. Okay, so exporting it, right? So now we added the UVs and the UDIM. So actually, we finished two steps. We created our objects, materials, we added the UVs and organized our UDIMs. Then we can actually start texturing. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll save this. And then what I'm going to do is delete history is always good, guys. It just removes the modifying of UVs that you've done. So deleting the history will be good. So what I'll do now is I want to start exporting stuff. Okay. So I really just want those, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select that and then select the props. Okay. Those are the ones I want to export. Then I'll just go File and then I'll just go Export Selection, and we're exporting using FBX. So I'll just go FBX and then maybe I'll just put it under Assets and then I'll just call that um, you know what? Something's there already. So maybe I'll just put it under data and um, I'll just call that texturing. Okay. So it's an FBX file, guys. Okay. So default settings for FBX to export. And then what I need to do next is open Substance Painter. Okay, so Substance Painter, and you should have Substance Painter because you do have access to um, Adobe. So Adobe comes in Substance Painter. So just make sure to have your Adobe account, install Substance Painter, and you're fine. Your issue is if you're primarily using a laptop with not a lot of power, then that's an issue. It requires significant RAM. So you might want to consider, working on it on a faster machine or maybe on campus, right? So what I'll do is I'll hit close. And again, we're now in the texturing process, right? And this is basically what you end up doing in your previous subjects, which is creating new. And then we're specifying a template for that. So the idea behind the template is, what are you familiar working on? So if you're familiar with a metallic roughness workflow, where you go get the metallic and the roughness parameters and then exporting it back to Maya, then just use that. I prefer, wouldn't actually have any preference. You know what? Maybe that one is fine. I'll just use the starter one. Okay. The size of my document will be 2048. Again, this is the important bit, guys. You have to make sure that use UDIM tile workflow is turned on. You won't be able to turn it if it's already turned on or it's turned off. You won't be able to bring it back. So at the start, right, you have to make sure that UV tile workflow or UDIMs is turned on. Okay, and then what I'll do is I'll select the FBX file. And for me, the FBX file is here. Um, it's this, yikes. Is it under data? Okay, there you go. So texturing, that's the FBX file. Hit open. Okay. And then what I'll do is I'll hit OK. So there you go, guys. So see, I was able to export everything. Okay. Let's do it again. So create new, auto, that's fine. Basically, if you don't have UVs, I think it will auto unwrap it if you don't have UVs. But if you already have UVs, then it won't do anything. Okay. So this one, I think If you don't have UVs, it will try to auto unwrap it. But if you have UVs, then it will respect your UVs. And just to prove my point, so see, I think if you go here under 2D, see, it respects your UVs. See, so as I mentioned, it will respect your actual UVs. Okay, so what do you end up doing? Okay, what we end up doing is we go to mode and we go to bake mesh maps, right? So that's basically, you know, standard procedure, right? Why do you need to bake mesh maps? You need to bake mesh maps because that allows you to have a procedural workflow inside Substance Painter. You are able to leverage those maps to create different types of effects, right? So you need to have that turned on. But notice that it's able to analyze your UDEM tiles. See, notice that for the body, it was able to detect 1, 2, 3, 4 UDEM tiles. For the clothing, it was able to detect 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 UDEM tiles. For the props, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So see, notice that uh, Substance Painter is actually able to understand the UDEM tiles that you have in your object. So I'll just change this to 2048. Turn this on. Now we're using low res poly as high res mesh. So basically, if you're not doing a high res low res workflow, so in advanced asset creation, you create the high-res model, you have your low-res model, and you basically bake the normal map to that low-res model. We're not doing it for this one, so we're just turning this on. But it doesn't mean that that workflow isn't important. That's actually extremely important, but for now, we're doing it in a basic level, right? So we don't want to deal with stuff like high-res, low-res workflows for now. Anyway, with this, okay, we just need to make sure I think this one I usually prefer just using by mesh name. We'll talk about that more later on, but basically it's just how it creates the maps. If it considers other objects beside it, it's ideal that it does, but it often creates issues if you're not good at addressing those issues, then I much rather have you just change that to mesh name. Okay, so what happens is, guys, you go to your normal, that's okay. World space, ambient occlusion, okay? Under self-occlusion, just use same mesh. Curvature, under self-intersection, just use same mesh. Position, thickness, always self-occlusion, same mesh, okay? And I think that's it, okay? Once you've done that, just click on Bake Selected Texture, and then there you go. Okay. Okay, almost done. Okay. Not almost done. Baking is done. What happens is we'll end up. I can see there's an issue there on the left hand side. I think they're sharing UV spaces. Uh, so I might need to modify that later on. So I can see the side there. Looks like that might be an issue. That means I need to modify the UVs manually. But anyway, I'll just skip that one for now and then just work on this. Okay, so this is what I'm saying, guys. So see, that means I'm pretty sure what that means is you have overlapping UVs. And if you don't believe me, I'll just quickly check that bit. So see, that bit there. If you go to your UV editor, notice that, see, that bit. Let's see. So see, that bit there. There you go. So see that? If you select the object itself, notice that, see, that bit is actually sharing UVs with these areas, the smaller areas. So my automatic mapping didn't work properly. So I need to modify that. But anyway, for now, I'll just skip that. Okay, I'll let you guys modify that yourself. But I can already see there's an issue with my UVs there. But that actually looks okay. Okay, so with this one done, right? I can now return to painting mode. Okay. And now I can start the painting process inside Substance Painter. And we might need two classes to cover this. But anyway, okay, how this normally works is if you have a look at your UV sets, okay, or texture sets, notice that those are the materials that we created, right? See, we have the materials for the props, we have materials for the clothing, And then we have materials for the body. Okay. And notice that on top of that, right? Under clothing, see, you have that various UDIM tiles. Okay. So for example, for the clothing, right? Just to show you, I'll activate clothing. I'll hide everything else. I'll go to my layers. And what I'll do is maybe I'll just use some really basic stuff that you already know. So you can use default materials inside Substance Painter. So what I'll do is I'll just look for something. Maybe I'll just look for maybe just a really basic material for now. I look for something like, so I know it's weird. Maybe I'll just look for something like uh, this stylized wood. So left mouse button drag. I created that, I think, by myself. But anyway, I'll drag it and notice what happens. It's assigning it to everything, right? Okay. Now you can actually change how that's being projected. Okay. I'll remove this. Okay. And notice that you can change, you can use your UV projection, or you can actually use a different projection to it. It doesn't mean that it doesn't use UVs. It just means that how it's placing it will be different. So I can use triplanar projection just to, I guess, get rid of some of the issues that I'm so see, so maybe I like that. Okay. Now the thing is, guys, we're using UDIM workflows. What does that mean? In your right hand side, see under your layers, and again, this is not a basics Substance Painter subject. So this is under the assumption that you know how to use Substance Painter. But anyway, see that empty button there or empty box? That allows you to specify what UDIMs you actually want to assign that to. So just to show you, see, maybe I just want that assigned to, let's say, the hat. So that means the hat is this UDIM 5. So what I'll do is, see, I'll just select that one. Okay, so notice what happens. It only assigns it to the hat, the amulet, and then this one. Okay, so with that said, maybe I'll do something else. Maybe I'll use another one. Let's have a look at this organic flesh. Oh, that's weird. Maybe I'll just use that. Maybe that metallic rust. Okay, doesn't make sense, but I'll just drag it and plug it on top. Okay, there. Okay, so see, the metallic rust is assigned to everything. Okay, but what I'll do is I can now go here and then I'll tell, you know what, maybe I just need it on the jacket. So where's the jacket there? It's this one. So it's 01004. So I'll turn off everything else. See, and notice what happens. See, we assigned it to the jacket. So uh, if I turn this on, notice that I now have this. So it's a bit weird because look, notice that you're not seeing the effect for all of it, but I think it's just a display thing. So see, if I actually select both, they're actually there. Okay. So now I'll do it one more time. Okay, maybe for, let's say, I'll use a special material this time. Okay, so special material, similar stuff. There's leatherette, or maybe there's plastic. So I'll just use that plastic one. You know what? There's leather, this one. Plug that in. Okay. So leather damage, maybe I'll just assign it to everything else. Okay. So similar stuff, guys, here. So see, I'll assign it um, boots. Maybe I'll assign it to the boots and maybe there. Okay, so there you go. Okay, so notice what happens. See, there. Okay, so notice now that I have something like that. Okay, so again, relatively straightforward stuff, right? So I'm just specifying, even if it's sharing one material, I can actually specify the material on different, well, material, I can specify the texture for different UDIM tiles. Okay, now the question is, if you have something like this though, okay, so yes, I like the wood, but I actually want a different material for this. How do I do it? This is where your masking abilities come in, right? So just to show you, if I use this machinery one, or you know what, maybe this paint spray, okay, drag that in, okay, there you go. So for the paint spray, right, I actually want it assigned on this bits, right? So basically, I only want it assigned on there. Okay. But I don't want it assigned to the hat. I just want it assigned to this, the pendant and the wand. So what I can do is I can right click on that. Remember, you can create a mask, black mask. Okay. And then with the black mask, notice that it's went back to its default wood. So what I'll do is I'll select the mask and I'll actually select the objects I want to add to that particular material. And how this works is you guys already know that you can use polyfill. And under polyfill, you can just go to object or mesh fill. And basically, I just want this bit, and maybe this bit. And I'll just end up selecting all of it really. There you go. Okay, so notice what happens there. I now assigned, right? So this is where layering comes in, right? So you can just call this paint spray, and then it's going to be the wand. And then this one is metal rust, and it's basically the jacket. And then this one is for your wood, rough, and it's basically for your hat. And then this one, the leather jacket for everything else. Okay, so else. Okay. So again, notice now that I'm able to create that particular texture, right? So again, relatively straightforward if you're just doing, as the issue is if you just rely on the materials you have inside Substance Painter, then you won't really get a lot. You can combine different materials if you want, but you might end up creating your own material. Okay, so just checking if this UDIM process is relatively clear for everyone. So just, you know what? Let me just do it one more time. So similar stuff, okay? Let's have a look at the props, okay? Props, similar stuff, see? So for the props, I'll make sure it's selected, okay? Maybe I'll go to my special material, smart materials. I'll look for machinery, plug that in, okay? And then remove that. So I don't want it for everything. So I'll just go to this UDIM tile, and then I'll specify what UDIM tile belongs or what area belongs to that material. So I think it's that. Okay, so actually like that. Okay, so on top of that, what can you do? Maybe you want another layer to that. Okay, so what? You know what? Maybe rather than having it with this machinery one, I'll just show you. Maybe let's have it with a clean one. Okay, so maybe this, I'll look for a steel one. So let's look for steel. So maybe steel. Okay, so there you go. Okay, so that's steel, guys. Okay, but on top of that, right? I just want it on that bit. Okay, but I want to expand on this. Maybe it's part steel, part machinery. So this bit thing. So what I'll do is I'll plug that in. Okay, so again, it's part steel, part machinery. So what I'll do is in the machinery as well, I'll also just specify that. But I don't want it affecting everything, right? So this is where you can add your own mask. So right click, black mask. So in the black or white, doesn't really matter, but I'll start with the black. And then with the black mask, I'll right click on the mask and then I'll just create a generator. So I basically generate my own mask. Add a generator, and with that generator, maybe I'll use, I don't know, dirt one. See? So notice what happens. It combines both of them. I can lower down the dirt level and the dirt contrast, and then grunge amount, grunge scale. So basically, guys, see, notice what happens. It's a combination of both. Not a big fan of the dirt there. Maybe I'll just remove that and then just add a totally different generator. And maybe for this generator, I'll just use, maybe I'll just use the mask editor. Maybe I can just generate my own, or maybe, you know what, curvature. I'll use curvature. And maybe with curvature, it's basically going to use just the curvature there. So see? And maybe I'll actually invert that. Let me see if I can just invert. There you go, global invert. Okay, so notice what happens. It's only affecting those areas. See, so it's a combination of both. Okay. Okay, so again, guys, this is just some stuff that you already know from texturing inside Substance Painter, right? So again, maybe for this, I want wood. So I'll just go wood there, plug that in. But again, for the wood, I don't want it for everything. I just want it for the back. So maybe for the box there. There you go. And then maybe for that, uh, again, maybe I'll combine a little bit of wood and a little bit of paint. So I'm thinking maybe there's some sort of paint there. Um, paint, this one, paint roll. Plug that in. So maybe I'll also specify one there. Okay. And then what I'll do is, again, add a black mask. And then with that mask, I can even just paint it, but rather than painting it, I'll just go right click, add the generator, and then I'll just use my own, create my own mask, global balance, ambient occlusion, curvature. So if you want to have a look at the mask itself, see, that's the mask. And I think you can just, there you go. And I think that's it. Okay. So maybe I'll have that, turn off the mask, and then material. Okay. And then lots of other things you can do on top of that. Okay. So as I mentioned, right, it's going to be um, exploring and then playing around with it. Okay. I'll just cover one more and that's it. So the only question, perhaps, and we'll cover more next week, right? Maybe one of the questions that you might end up having is, what if you actually want to create your own material? Okay. So what if you want to create your own material? Maybe you don't want to rely on the materials here. Okay. So maybe I'll just show you. Okay. I'll just show you one really useful tool. And that is if you download another software from Substance Painter, as from Substance, it's called Substance Sampler. Okay. So if you Substance Sampler, guys, it's good. It allows you to convert images into materials. So let me just show you what it does. So I'll just open it. Okay. So the reason why you might want this, okay? What if you want to do your own materials? What if you want to create cartoony, stylized, painterly type of stuff? And one way to do that is using Photoshop or Illustrator, and you're familiar with Illustrator or Photoshop, or you might draw your own, or you might do some painting, and then you want to scan that and then use that as some sort of texture. Uh, you can actually do that, right? So what Substance Sampler is able to do is able to convert your texture into a material that you can use inside Substance Painter. So how does it work? I'll just show you, right? So for example, I just downloaded, right? I downloaded an image. I just downloaded a cartoony um, wood texture, okay? So let's say that one. See, that's hard to find, guys, okay? Meaning that's hard to do looking for trying to achieve that particular look without using something like Photoshop or Illustrator. But what I'm saying is you are able to create a stylized look. So see, using that one image, it's called I just downloaded it. So cartoony texture, I also want that to be tiled, but even if it's not tiled, it works. So what I'll do, guys, is I'm going to just drag that, left mouse button, drag that directly. I think create new, sorry. Okay, it's relatively straightforward to do. So again, see this cartoon texture? I'll just drag that as a layer here. Okay. And then it will ask me, do I want to convert that to a material? That's exactly what I want, right? I want to convert that to a material. So I'll just use that. And then I'll just hit import. That material will be a 2K material. And I'll just hit import. Okay. Now it will take some time, but basically it will convert that image into a material, meaning it will have its own, normal map. It will have its own other parameters. Okay, I'll just demonstrate. It does take some time because it needs to calculate, but the idea is you are able to convert something that's stylized into an actual material you can use inside Substance Painter. And I'll demonstrate that in a sec. Okay, so again, it does take some time, right? So notice now that it's converting, and then hopefully it doesn't eat too much of my resources. And there you go. So see, notice that that's highly stylized. Okay, it created a material out of that. You can actually modify the material by just going here. So you can increase the micro details. So see, notice that that changes as well. And you can also increase the medium details. And you can also include the large details. So see, and then do you want it shiny or do you want it rough? So maybe I'll just have that rough, shiny, and then um, I'll have a look. See, so that's your base color. That's your normal map. That's your roughness map. That's your metallic map. That's your height map. That's your ambient occlusion map. Okay. And then you can modify it as well on top of that. Don't really spend too much time here, but I think you can add things like custom filters. So add a layer, and then maybe you can add a blur. So it's like Photoshop. So you can add, let's say, a layer of coat. Um, So maybe I'll add coat and varnish. Okay. So I'm adding coat and varnish. And then maybe for this one, I'll just have that as a lower down the opacity, the thickness, and then for the coat, there you go. Okay. So maybe I have something like this, guys. Okay. Okay, so I'm done. Okay, I already converted that material. I can modify it, meaning I can still add a layer and maybe just color correct it. So brightness and contrast, and maybe increase the brightness and then increase the contrast. There you go. Okay, so I'm happy with that. And what I'll do, guys, is I'm going to export that, right, as a material. So export. Uh, for the material, I'll just specify where it is. I think Substance Painter understands SBAR materials. So I'll just use that. And then I'm going to export that. I'll give it a name, sample, or say, let's say stylized wood. Okay. Ivan, for example. I'll plug that into my folder. I'll put it in my desktop, for example. Sample wood, Ivan. Okay. And then select the folder. Okay, so there you go. Select folder. So sample wood and then export. Okay. Okay, so again, we created the material. You can actually use that inside Maya, but for now, I really just want to use it inside Substance Painter. So what I'll do, guys, I'll just go, I think, File, Import, Resources, and I'll just add a resource. I think I've saved it under desktop, right? So again, the idea is if you want to create your own material, I think it's under sample. Yikes. Might have forgotten. Oops. So file, import. Let me just see if I can remember how to import a material. File, import resources, sample. So I might have, let me just see if it's actually there. Okay. So Ivan, sample. So let's do that one more time. Okay. Let me see if I can Google it in. Haven't done it. S bar material to substance painter. Okay, so let's see if I can just import it directly. So quick sec, guys. Okay, I think I can just drag and drop it. Jeez. Okay, looks like I might be able to just drag and drop, which is weird. I'll just put it in the desktop. So I think it's under sample. There you go. Drag and drop. Okay, so looks like I can import. And then there you go. That's a stylized wood. And let's see if that actually works, right? So I'll just open the body and maybe I'll just assign it directly to the body. So that's stylized wood. And there you go, guys. So see, notice now that it does work, right? So I was able to import that material, remember, from substance. So from substance sampler, okay, plug that into directly to our base materials here, and then just use it, okay? And notice what happens, exactly the same thing, okay? I can plug that directly to the face, and that's it, okay? I'll just go in. Okay, and I think that's it. Got how to put it back. Texture set. There you go, geez. Okay. So see guys, notice what happens. I was able to add that in. Okay. So what this allows you to do, right? It allows you to create your own materials and then again, make it stylized and then plug that into Substance Painter. Okay. So I think that's it, everyone. Okay. Any questions? We'll cover this more next week, but I think you might have enough to start experimenting with your stuff. So question from Ida with regards to shadows and subsurface. Let's see. So, okay. So the question about subsurface, right? We might cover that next week. But the issue with subsurface is basically what you need to do is you just need to lower the subsurface scattering effect. Because if the scattering effect is too much, that means it will just end up absorbing light. If it ends up absorbing light, then you won't really see shadows on top of it. So it doesn't mean that it gets rid of shadows. It means that if it's too much, so, for example, if you have something like really translucent candles, right? It's hard to see a shadow that's sitting on a candle that's lit because the subsurface effect makes it glow a little bit. So you're not seeing any shadows. So you just need to lower that down. Okay. So that's in the material. That's correct. So you modify that. Yes. So the issue was the material used. So your subsurface scattering is just a bit too much. Okay. So you need to lower that down, or you need to lower or modify the radius of the subsurface scattering effect. Okay. And I think that's it. So what I want you guys to do, right? Start experimenting with that. So for your week 7 challenge, oh sorry, week 6. Geez, it's week 6. Um, so week 6. Okay, just share your work in progress. So texturing work in progress. So work in progress, snapshot of Substance Painter. Okay, snapshot. Okay, in our week 6 channel. Okay, so that's it. Okay, there's no way around it. The only way you understand some of the issues that you might end up getting is to actually start working on your stuff. So a lot of the stuff looks easy to, I guess, it looks easy to do, but it suddenly changes when you start where you need to actually do it yourself. The reason why it's relatively straightforward for me, because again, I've done it quite a few times already, so I know potential issues that you might see immediately. But for you guys, it might be different, so you might want to play around, experiment with it first, and then we can see if you have any issues. Okay, so what I'll do is I'm going to share that right in our announcements, and then I'll just put in week 6 challenge. And again, if you haven't done the lighting, do the lighting first and then do this afterwards, right? But once you've done this, again, just share your Substance Painter screenshot. Once you've done this, you're almost like 70% there, really. Okay. You just need to modify it, have it look stylized, and then we'll cover that next week, and then you're pretty much there. Okay. So I'll just add LLD 300, and there you go. Okay. So is that clear for everyone? Just checking. So final check before you go. So Ida, Jared, Riley, Samuel, and Xiao, relatively straightforward. Okay. So with that, okay. So I'm looking forward to seeing your work. Okay. Share it in Teams, and then I'll see you guys next week. Okay. So catch you later then. So stop the recording now, and I'll see you then.